What does it take to grow beauty and colors more vibrant? More water, the right sun, nutrients. It takes all of that and more. Like family. At Knoyer Garden Center and Glass House Market, family is present in everything we do. Generation after generation. From our family to our employees who make you feel right at home. That's the difference you'll find when you shop Knoyer Garden Center.
We recommend listening to the CW Pod with a glass of Steeple Ridge Bourbon. Grown, distilled, well-rested, and bottled in Erling, Iowa. Now from the Channel Seed Studios, this is the CW Pod, fueled by Steeple Ridge.
Of all the CW pods that I needed to crack open a Steeple Ridge bourbon, this feels like it's probably the one.
We haven't even started yet.
The problem is my dear friend Randy Peterson, we just need to get you some Bud Light, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're okay. You endorse Bud Light, right?
I'll do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, these days.
I offered Randy a bottle of Steeple Ridge, and he's just not the whiskey drinking type. Can
you imagine that?
It'd be a
Shocker.
disaster.
East Side boy drinking whiskey. They throw me out.
I can't count the number of bar stools that I've bellied up with you, and I don't think I've ever seen you order a whiskey.
No, that's not true. Maybe not whiskey, but rum and Coke.
You can do that.
I've done that because
that's Birch's preferred drink.
I know.
Yeah.
And I may have been with him or you may have been with us and no, it wasn't in Tulsa.
Oh God, that's another pod for another day.
Yeah. A midnight to 6 o'clock, during the midnight to 6 a.m. hour.
We have a great Tulsa story that will come out in about 30 years.
Okay. Yeah. Now I'll be gone.
Hope not. How are you, man? You look all relaxed over there.
I am
all retired.
I feel good. I do. I'm in a good spot. Yeah, it's all good. I've been blessed for 52 years. Employment wise, working at one place for 52, working at a newspaper for 52 years.
We'll never see it again, man. Like I'm telling
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt it. Yeah.
It's just you are special. We'll get into all that reasons why, but like with our industry now, like one person being somewhere for 52 years just seems like it's not even possible because these companies change so much by the day.
Yeah. And people don't get jobs out of college and stay there. I mean, they move on.
So that's the only job you had in journalism.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I started when I was a senior at Drake, to be honest with you.
And you were just stringing?
No, I was working full time, but and I finished out school part time. So, so it was, they needed somebody right away at the register. They had something happened a long time ago in 1972. They needed somebody, and I'd already been there as a part time, and I'd already been there. And they said, "Would you? We've got to fill this position. Would you?" Just cover high school sports and go get coffee for the full-time guys and
kind of like I used to do for you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Go punch everybody's parking meter.
That was me
when it needed punched. And, so, I mean, I did that. I wanted to get my foot in the door and I did that. And I've been doing that ever since.
Kind of a deal too with our field that you're not just rewarded for hard work as much as it used to be either. It's not you personally, but just in general, like it feels like this business, like to get to a certain point, there's some luck involved, and it's also now it's not about like the discipline of sports writing. Like I did a pod weeks ago about how like your era is like, in my opinion, the golden era of sports writers, like you and the Bob Ryans and like that.
Right.
I know I'm missing a million, but the Tom Chattel.
Woody Page.
Yeah, Tom Chattel was my guy.
Chattel, without
growing
Chattel
up,
and I talk about that all the time.
I read him religiously.
Yeah. I was glad to get to be.
But you guys
Yeah.
all started at a certain era where it's like, okay, you got to be a really disciplined writer, deadlines, right? Like
Right.
the beat was your life.
You do, and you had to be not a slave to the clock.
Yes.
If something took more than 8 hours, you did it, or you didn't have a job. If something took more than 40 hours, like during a bowl week, for example, I just threw that out for an example. Obviously everybody's working more than 40 hours.
Yeah.
Or at least we did way back when, or during NCAA tournaments. But I sense that we didn't have a problem doing that back in the day, and our bosses made up for it. Our companies for whom we work made up for it by telling us just during the summer, just disappear for a couple of weeks. And we did.
Mm-hmm.
And we did. We got comp time. We just disappeared. I don't think they can do that these days because there's so many, because for the fear of litigation, I'm not certain they can do that these days. I'm talking about every major newspaper or media outlet. I'm not talking about just one in particular. The Register. I'm talking about every place. I don't sense you have that dedication by 100% of the journalists today. And I said by 100%. Most of them, sure. But back in the day, it was 100% or you're going to be on a different beat.
I also think that, and this has changed even in my career, when I graduated, like to just go and cover the Big 12, or I say that or the Big 10 was pretty rare. Like, I had to go to Shenandoah for 3 years, right? And then my career doesn't even count.
But you started at the top there in a certain way. I mean, I know this because I know the state, but KMA it's a blowtorch.
Best thing
it's like
ever
HO.
did.
It's like HO.
Yeah.
In Central Iowa. It's a blowtorch.
Best thing I ever did was go and work over there. And
you work for
John Hanson, Chuck Morris.
Yeah.
Marquino, those, but I went from this fan site thing that had no structure to all of a sudden your ass is on the air at 5 a.m. Lee Hughes, I know.
I love Lee Hughes. Yeah.
Like, and it's like, I was out calling softball game at 10:30, getting back, cutting up audio in bed at midnight. And then I had to be in there at 5.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing ever happened to me.
You learn discipline.
Yes.
You learn yes, exactly. You've got the work ethic of, okay, this is what it's going to be like. Do I like this?
Yeah. And I feel like now a lot of these reporters graduate and I'm to blame. Like there's these fan sites, right? And like the 247s, and they hire a lot of these younger people, but then there's also not as much room for them to grow. Like you started at the ground level of the Register, the state's biggest newspaper, and then you ended at the top.
Right.
Like that's just so rare now.
Yeah, but it's so rare when people start at one place and then finish because it's I don't know whether it's, I've never really sat down and talked to people why they work 5 years someplace and go someplace else for 5 years or whatever, but I sense it's got a lot partly due to salaries, for example. I can't tell you what people are making these days as a reporter at a major newspaper. I don't have any idea.
I would guess it's lower than even 10 years ago. It's just
I doubt that, but possibly.
I just think it's because
I don't know.
I feel like our industry now values names and social media following more than the actual reporter.
There certainly is something. I don't know. There's certainly something to be said about the popularity of things, of whether it's people, whether it's daily columns where people know a column is going to be in one spot every day, or whenever it is. Because metrics. I mean, there was a time at the Register and at every major newspaper where at 6 o'clock every morning we would get an email saying how many people read whatever stories, and for how long they read them. Now, how the hell do you know how long somebody reads something? But anyway, we would get that. We would get that metric. And for a while, those metrics were the Bible. Now, they didn't do any firing or hiring because of that, but what they did was and I'm not just talking about the Register, people, it was a gauge on what the readers are reading and who they're reading, which I don't know. I was always taught that you're a journalist, you cover a beat.
Your beat is your beat.
You know what, and after a certain number of years, you, Chris Williams, know what your reader wants to read, or you, Randy Peterson, knows what the readers want to read. I mean, you darn sure better know, or get out of the business, because we know the insides and stuff of our beats, and we know that we know what they're looking for, what the reader is looking for, I guess I should say.
How's the reader changed?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I think the reader of today is looking for, they're still looking for good storytelling. They're still looking for good watchdog work. They're still looking for open records and for investigative stuff. And you and I have talked about open records. And every time we're together, it seems like we talk about that.
Before we fight. Then we hug.
Then we hug and have a beer, and sit there in the middle of a rainstorm or thunderstorm in Kansas City. But yeah, I think I don't think I know. I know that there's still an appetite for that. People want that.
Absolutely.
But they also want positive news about their teams they're covering. They want, and if they're reading stuff critical, it darn sure better be well thought out. And it better be not necessarily critical, but it better be thought-provoking, I guess. There's a way you can be critical or you can be thought-provoking. And it took a while for me to figure that out, but I think I figured it out. You can be, you can spark conversation or you can be critical. And I always tried to spark conversation.
Isn't the key too to just not be personal?
Yeah.
Like that.
But some people take it personal.
I know.
I'm talking about coaches.
Well, that's the problem.
Coaches and families of coaches whose names won't be, I won't say.
I think we're maybe referencing the same person in our
probably
mind.
Are.
It does get hard because we're humans. And
yes.
And it's especially hard now. I think I would guess when you were, let's just go back to it's 2002, you, Keeler, Logue, trying to think of my register that I read. Brown.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we put out the print product. The internet exists, but the print product is still,
Yeah.
And you really didn't hear much negative, right? I'm sure the sources you're covering would come back to you, but like with fans, did you get much shit from people?
No, not at all. No, because
like you do now,
because there weren't as many, like you were alluding to, avenues for them to get what they wanted. Did I get much shit from fans? Not really. It depends. And the whole Iowa State thing is I assume it's probably the same way everywhere. But yeah, okay, I would get criticism from some fans, but I never knew whether they were Hawkeye fans or Iowa State fans, or Hawkeye fans trolling or Iowa State, fans. I don't know. Which was fine. You just had to be, you couldn't let anything bother you. And I didn't. It was tough for a while. It was tough for when your daughters are reading the internet.
Yeah.
And your daughters will be coming of that age too, Christopher. Yeah. You know that. When they're reading the internet.
In fact, I think I'm already there with one of them.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
The amount of her classmates whose parents know me, and some of them are Iowa fans. And
yes, exactly.
I get it.
No,
I'm not there yet, but
exactly.
I get it.
But your daughters are reading that, and they're reading people say nasty things about their dad. Yeah, it's tough.
So I
or
think
granddaughter in my case, 15-year-old granddaughter or 14.
That's another thing too, though. That's why I loved. This is why I say you guys are our golden era. You're our not golden era. That makes you sound old.
I am old.
I'm saying it was.
I'm in my 40s. I am old.
I think when we all look back at this, when I'm your age,
Yeah.
God willing, we'll still look back and be like, that was the best era of sports writing. Because I guess what I think now, like a guy like me, I've been around a while, but I don't have the perspective from the grind that your era did. And even like Lysico, like he works his way up at the Press Citizen, and then he's an editor for a while, and now he was a beat writer for a while, a columnist. Like I've done the same thing, where I always think the best people have done everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like my wife is a great veterinarian because she used to scrape the shit out of the.
Yeah.
She'd hose it down, and then she was a technician.
And I guarantee she's not a person who watches 8 hours, leaves after 8 hours. Because I had a late night conversation with her at one time.
Sure.
She kept the office open for an hour or so.
She does. She's the last one to leave, and one
Yeah.
of the. I won't say she's one of the first to get there because she's a notoriously bad morning person. But
that's because she's putting up with you when you're never around at night. She's got to put the kids to bed.
My point is, I think that you guys have like this very rare experience where you started in like this print.
Yeah.
This print is everything.
And there was no internet.
Correct. And like the internet, I actually think has made us worse sports writers because we hurry, like we got to be the first one to get our content out there. And like, so you go through this transition where the internet is a thing, and now, oh crap, this Twitter thing's real. But you guys you've outlasted it all, and you just have so much perspective where now anyone in this industry under 40, we're kind of just thrown into it where, all right, tweet during games. Sure. Okay. But that's when we could be really doing great research and, bringing this perspective to the audience.
Yes.
One person is one person. You can only do so many things. You see where I'm going with this?
I know 100% where you're going with that because I've done both. I've tweeted during games, and I don't necessarily tweet during games. And I don't get it, the whole tweeting during games thing, other than the fact that people who aren't at the games have now become used to it. They've now become used to it. And I, like I think I would be much rather watching a game, writing stuff down that's going on during the game, and then at halftime going back over and looking at my notes and trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to ask about this during the post game, blah blah blah. Why did this happen? Why is the Iowa State center still in shotgun, or the Iowa State quarterback still in shotgun formation on fourth and an inch from the goal line? Boy, was I all over that one for however many years.
You made him change.
I made him change. I don't think so. If I had that much power, they'd be throwing.
You got Joel Lanning.
They'd be throwing every pass last year.
You got a freaking linebacker
after the Ohio game.
You need 2 inches. You got Joel.
I never
Lanning,
understood that.
and he's in shotgun.
Never.
We don't practice taking snaps.
I don't understand.
We'll practice it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's one of those. I wrote that for a while too.
Hasn't Twitter ruined? So like I have this kind of personal flaw. I'm doing a lot of like post game video podcasting. Yeah. Like that's just basically what I do now. And I'd rather write for what it's worth. It's just for our audience. It's like you said, know your reader. Our audience wants that. Like we have our biggest audiences when I'm going live. Boom, give them my thoughts. Like the soul of me would rather write the 1,000-word column and like dive.
How about 800? Go back to 750 to 800. But yeah.
Boy, so I kind of have this rule with myself. If I'm going to tweet during the game, I'm not going to write a column because just go and read my Twitter feed because those are my thoughts, right?
Yes.
And I don't know, like I don't know where we're going with that, but I hope that we don't lose the written aspect of things. Like that's got to stay a core to what we're doing.
I agree, and it's the written is what am I trying to say here? You can archive the written or
Yeah.
whatever. It's there. It's in ink.
All those old
It's
newspaper
there.
clips.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, do you have the as far as audio, do you have the first Steve Prohm audio you ever did? Probably not.
I know
But
it
I mean-
exists somewhere, but
okay.
I don't know how I would find
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah.
It's on the feed somewhere.
Yeah,
But
exactly. That's what I mean. So there is a sense of everything can be archived, but I grew up writing. I grew up with the Big Peach. I grew up in that age, like you said, and that's just what I do. I'm getting into. I don't mind podcasting. I like podcasting because, especially, God, forgive me for saying this, Lord. I like it doing with you even sometimes. Jeez, did I ever say that?
we used to do a deal.
I've had some of that steeple stuff.
I've come
I thought
around
this
on
was
you.
water.
I've grown on you over
We've
the years.
grown on each other.
Yeah, like it's just funny because, like, if it were up to me, I don't know if I would do a lot of podcasting, and maybe it's just because I've done it a lot. But that's what my audience wants.
I was
like,
going to say, yeah, that's what you do now.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's this hard transition, but it's also like this is how our people want it chronicled. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a heck of a lot of sense because that goes along with I don't know how many years ago it happened, but the reader, I don't want to say suddenly, it happened over time, but more and more readers wanted their news via their social media, whatever they do social media on.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted that instead of getting a newspaper with day old scores, because that's the way it's
The old box scores.
It's gone. Yeah. They wanted to read the newspaper, and they wanted to get their news from the internet. So the newspapers gradually changed over time, and newspapers are still trying to define themselves. Also, there's still a there's still a use for print. I mean, there is, and I will go to my grave saying that. I will 100% go to my grave saying that.
I would make the same argument for local radio, because a lot of people will be quick to just put an arrow through them. And I'm like, man, well, what happens if there's like an emergency, right? Like, we need it.
Exactly.
And the internet's down, right? Like,
yeah,
it's literally why they have FCC, clearance. And like, we've got, so this is the most fascinating part, like, of the future to me, is where we went from this era where everybody just subscribed because it was the way it was one of the only outlets, right?
You got your news from radio, TV, and newspaper, and then probably in reverse order. Obviously, yes, in reverse order.
And what that did is the amount of people who were buying a subscription to read the city council beat were probably pretty small, right? Like, I mean, but there was a certain number who wanted
but it's still happening. It's still something that's happening. Yes.
What my fear is just a citizen, and is we've seen this growing trend to niche, right? So like what I do with Cyclone Fanatic, right? We're very niche. It's only for Iowa State fans. If you're a Drake fan, there's no reason for you to go to Cyclone Fanatic. Well, the problem is that a lot of times, like your sports page back in the day, I would guess the Big Peach, which was iconic, would fund a lot of the civic stuff that we need as a democracy. We need people at school board meetings, right?
Oh, without question.
So, like,
yes, that goes back.
How
to
do we
Watchdog.
protect that?
That goes back to Watchdog.
Absolutely.
How do we
protect it?
How do you protect it? You don't read the analytics and say that we still have to have people at these events, whatever the event is. whatever the
School
event,
board.
school board meeting.
Yeah.
If there's nothing going on at a school board meeting, if we've seen the agenda early, does that mean you don't go? Hell no, you still go. You
Because that's
just
how
don't
the
write.
power
You just don't write.
overuses power, though, if there's nobody watching them.
Yeah. Yeah. You just don't. Yeah. You've got to go because there's watchdog stuff there.
Do you believe that our media ownership in the country, like, because I don't know where to go with this. I've always wondered, like, and this isn't a good way to go down. Like, should we be subsidizing local journalism in a way, but then your government-owned media, and we don't want that.
Not at all.
My fear is that our media ecosystem, and I'm talking everybody, not just where you came from, not the New York, everybody. It's so based on profit now, and it's because it's hard. I don't want that stuff to get cut. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because you have to cut certain things, and that's not getting the clicks. We've got to stay
and exactly, and
focused on that.
Right. I agree with you. And I it's not just it's at newspapers everywhere. They go through that. Why I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Why have a $60,000 reporter covering something that nobody reads, for example? And it's nothing against the reporter, or nobody reads or listens to, whatever. It's nothing against the reporter. It's just that it's not a sexy beat.
Yeah.
Like, our Iowa State or our college beats.
Like you were on when you grew up in the business.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have the sexiest beat the whole time.
Right. I mean, back when I was covering North and Tech. You don't even remember Tech High School. There used to be a Tech High School.
Really?
Yeah. I was covering, I'd covered North and Tech in football, and those were the two back then. Not very good football teams in the city, but yet I've covered them just like I was covering Dowling Valley or Dowling Southeast Polk or something. Nowadays, Dowling Valley, Dowling Southeast Polk, or throw a valley in there too. But it was something that needed to be covered. It was regardless of, and thank goodness back in the day there weren't analytics, but
because you didn't know, because it was
exactly. Yeah.
Well, we're going to frame the front page, and we're going to make this piece on Hayden Fry the number one slot, but we still covered the Iowa Barnstormers tryouts,
which we probably did. Yeah.
Well, I remember you guys had beat writers on everything.
We had a specific report. I know we covered, for example, Barnstormer games back when they first started. I know we covered the hockey team and the basketball team back when they first.
I'm old enough that I was
still cover the Iowa Cubs, but
when I was coming up, and they had different ownership at the time, but the Ames Tribune had a sports desk of like 5 people.
Yes.
Just by themselves.
I know it. Yeah, exactly.
Like because when Nolf was running it over there.
It's college town. Yeah, exactly. And you've got to. I mean, you've got your college sports going on. You've got Ames High School, Gilbert High School, Boone High School.
Yeah, all those surrounding communities.
You had to. And we had a huge sports staff at the Register. I mean, huge. I mean, it was, I can't even remember how many, I don't even want to guess, but it was a heck of a lot bigger than what this, the sports staff that I've been blessed to work for over the past years. And I say that truthfully, that I've been blessed to work for.
I want to get more to that. Let me thank a couple sponsors here. Conoyer Garden Center. It is time to plant, grow, and love with Conoyer Garden Center. Shop the family-owned Conoyer Garden Center, where everything they sell is locally grown. 2 locations in Grimes. That's over near Toyota Des Moines, on Highway 141, and also in Ankeny, right at the corner of Orlabor and Ankeny Boulevard. ConoyerGardenCenter.com. Of course, we are in the Channel Seed Studios here on the CW Pod, which is always presented by Steeple Ridge Bourbon. Randy Peterson, 52 years, recently retired from the Des Moines Register. We're looking back on his career, more importantly, getting wisdom as we look towards the future. I'm sure you've been asked this type of stuff a lot. My favorite Pete column, I think, may have been your one from the Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
because I knew how much you were dreading going to that.
You know that story.
Well, I was talking to you, and you were like, I got to go to this dog and pony show or whatever it was. I just threw that out there because it's one of my favorites. True. But give me a couple of things that you'll never forget from your career.
Field of Dreams is certainly one of them.
Yeah.
You're right. I didn't want to go to that. I'd seen Major League Baseball teams play before. I don't care. I did not care that who was it? The Yankees. I'm even a Yankee
White
fan.
Sox.
That the Yankees and the White Sox were gonna play in Dyersville.
And Costner comes out of the corn.
Costner walks out of the corn.
What a handsome guy that
is. It was, oh my God, my cell
And
phone.
Costner was hot too, because Yellowstone was like the #1 TV show in a country at that time.
And my cell phone started blowing up.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that. My cell phone started blowing up. Both my daughters. And then, because they said, "Are you watching this? Are you watching this? You know, you're lucky to be there at the game." And I was sitting there next to Birch, and it's like 150 degrees there.
Birch was probably
ridiculous.
just losing his mind, just being a seamhead like he is.
It's ridiculous.
Jeez.
But then, so when my granddaughter called me and she said, or texted me and she said, "Do you know how lucky you are to be here?" That's when I says, "Okay, I got to watch this." And there's, Costner comes out of the corn, and then, so right then and there, I sat down at my laptop and I deleted a huge part of my column that I had pre-written. It was the part of why in the hell is this game being played in Dyersville the same year or a year after Major League Baseball took minor league baseball out of where Burlington and Clinton.
Yeah.
How can you do that? How can you do that to Burlington and Clinton? And you're now doing a game in Dyersville. I had to take that part out because I anything negative in that column, I'd have been strung up.
Yeah, I get it, because it was such a.
It was.
They may have done it 100 times, and it's probably never going to be as perfect as
I
that.
hope they don't do it 100 times more, and they can't replicate it.
No,
I mean, I watched the game.
It felt like the World Series in 1990.
Exactly, and the dude who was on the fireworks. Who had the button for the fireworks?
Okay, give him a raise.
Oh, at least, yeah. And then after I walked out of Birch and I walked out about 1:00 in the morning after we got done writing and did all our stuff we had to do. So I watched the game on my cell phone. It was just me in the car. Birch went up earlier. I went up the day of the game. It was just me by myself in the car, and I watched the game on my cell phone. Probably shouldn't have done that. But as I was driving back, oh my God, Fox did such a great job with that game. And I got to see what you were seeing. I got to see what everybody was seeing from a different perspective. And that was when I decided, that's when I said to myself, man, I'm glad I went to this thing. It was awesome.
I experienced a lot of the Iowa State stuff that you have. We'll get to that for Iowa State fans, but I was curious. One of the things it boggles my mind. I understand it to a point, how different coaches are now compared to back in the day. But how different was it covering like the Hayden Fry days compared to now? Like, because these guys are Ferentz and Campbell while we like them, they're robots up on the stand, right? Like for the most part. What was that like when you walk into Hayden Fry's office? Give me some of that.
Back in the day when Hayden was coaching, or Walden or those guys.
Yeah.
When I'd say McCarty, but you'll see why I'm not throwing him in there. There was no internet. It was just there was no internet,
no TV, no cell phone camera.
Exactly. I mean, so you got to know the coaches in a different sense, because they didn't have their I don't want to say false face, but they didn't have to be on their A game all the time.
They didn't fear the gotcha.
Yeah,
thing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Or getting canceled.
Right. Yes, exactly. They didn't fear, and you can fill in the blanks on this one if you want. They didn't fear having their comments on the internet, whether right or wrong, not knowing that they were going to be on the internet, or
taking you out of context.
Exactly. Or photos of you showing up on the internet, which we've seen. It was a different world then. We got to know coaches in a different sense.
Did the Eustace thing change everything?
I don't know about changing.
That's what just came to my mind when you said that.
I don't know about changing everything.
But he was the first guy like to get busted on the internet for, right? Like, because
that I know of, and maybe it's because we're involved in that story right from here.
Yeah.
But that it certainly may have made coaches more what's the word I'm looking for? More knowledgeable of what's out there, what can be out there.
Boy, we kind of screw ourselves though when we, and I say we, not you or me, but just our industry.
Yeah.
When a coach gives a 400-word answer and we cut out 30 words and put it on Twitter and make them look like an idiot, it doesn't help the coaches want to.
But you don't do that, and
no,
I don't do that. It's some people in our industry.
Yes.
You're right,
yeah.
And it's
we don't do that.
No, but it's also it's probably some people in our industry, but it's also more so it's fans doing that because they can grab any interview now anywhere. I mean, you go to asaptranscripts.com and you can read anything essentially.
Well, you just gave away the golden goose, man.
I know.
Jeez.
Sorry.
Everybody's typing that in right now.
Everybody can.
Yeah, but you're right because like if let's say Matt Campbell, if somebody takes him out of context and it goes viral and it's just some random, he doesn't know the difference between that and us.
Right,
like,
exactly.
The fact is it's out and it made him look like an idiot, even though it's not what he meant by it.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's so many avenues now where everybody can get interviews, whether that's good or bad. I don't know. Or can read transcripts, whether that's good or bad. I don't have any idea, but that's how a lot of that gets done. And then, but yet there are some instances that where we get blamed. Our business gets blamed for that. Which if our business is getting blamed for that, then you and I are getting blamed for that. I'm just using that generally.
And then they take away access, and then it hurts the fans because they want the information and we can't get it.
But I think the coaches you and I cover on a daily basis, I covered, but that's going to be a tough one to not say. But anyway,
we'll see about that.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk. But but I mean, the coaches that we cover daily, they know that because we know our coaches so well. We know their families. They know our families. And that's a good thing. That hasn't changed over the years. We knew those, back in the day, obviously, but I mean, because we had different relationships because there was no internet. But at least if you work at it, you can still have that same relationship with coaches today. I mean, the coaches are going to be very selective on with whom they have that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
But it's still available out there. And the coaches, they know also that, okay, we're going to act like we're going to act like we've got this good, not act like we've got this good relationship, but the coach also knows that I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be fair. And if there's something I don't see right out there and I can back it up, we'll write about it. Are you the same way? I mean, we'll write about it. We'll be critical in our own way. Like Joe Lanning, 4th and a half inch from the back in shotgun, for example. We're going to be critical of that in our own way. Or Iowa State, that Iowa State Ohio game, where thank goodness they had that. As Rocco has said up until he said it all throughout the whole season. That game was the best game that happened to him. It showed them that hey, we got to get our ass. We got to play our ass off every game, and also maybe throw a few passes. Which they did, and they passed more after that. So there are things like that we can be not necessarily critical, but be accurate and but use negative as a way to spark the conversation and to spark some change sometimes.
The Hayden Fry thing I wanted to ask about was what was he like? Just no tape recorder. He was one of my heroes growing up. What was he like?
I don't know about a hero, but he was a good guy.
Well,
I mean,
we're a kid in Southwest
I
Iowa.
know exactly. I know you had him or Tom Osborne. Take your pick.
Yeah, because I mean, really,
take Ozzie or
I had no Iowa State, like,
or Devaney, maybe, I don't know.
Couldn't even read about Iowa State because we couldn't get the Register in my hometown for the
You got the
longest
World
time.
Herald.
We got the Omaha World Herald. The Omaha World Herald did not cover Iowa State. Like, it was.
But that changed. But yes, exactly.
It did. But I'm saying in the 90s,
right
prior to McCarney, like, it was not even a. The only thing I knew about Iowa State is this Fred Hoiberg guy, and when they were going to play Iowa in basketball, they didn't matter in football. So, like, Fry was pretty much it. Like, was he a character?
He was a character. I mean, he had the homespun Texas drawl.
Yeah.
He had the slangs. The funniest one, and we heard him 75 times if we heard one of them. But there was one that Iowa was playing at Colorado. A long time ago, and I covered the
back
game.
when we had, like, really good non-conference games.
Exactly. Oh yeah,
they were
exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Miami. Do you remember when Miami went to Iowa? Did you cover that game? They were number 1.
I don't remember if I covered that game.
It was Gino Toretta.
We
went.
I do remember.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
But so we're in Iowa. Used to practice. They used to walk through on Friday afternoons once they landed. They used to walk through, and it was a very windy day in Boulder. And a bunch of us reporters, we could hang out with Fry. That was a good time to
and they'd let you go to practice.
Yeah. I mean, but they weren't doing anything. They were just doing push-ups and side straddle hops.
God, you get shot if you walk into practice now.
Oh my gosh.
They got armed guards.
And the drone would have you,
have you arrested. Campus police.
But yes, but Hayden would always hold court. I mean, down at the end of the field, Hayden would hold court with however many reporters was there. And it was extremely windy. And when Hayden just all of a sudden blurted out, "It's so windy, it takes a spit right out of your mouth." I mean, good Lord. Where did that come from? I'd never heard that before, and I never heard it after, but that's Hayden. That's 100% Hayden. And in press conferences, if his team was going through a spell where it wasn't playing very well, he'd always deflect the attention from the team, and he'd get into some sort of a disagreement, excuse me, with a reporter. And, oftentimes it was somebody from the Register.
He'd, like, pick a fight with you?
Not, I'd argue, say, where did you get that stuff you wrote? I didn't like what you wrote.
And again, it's not on the internet now. So
no, exactly. Yeah.
Nobody's writing this.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was just Hayden deflecting criticism away from his team.
Oh,
because I mean, Jim Ecker at the Cedar Rapids Gazette was somebody who Fry would mention. I mentioned me, mentioned Malley, mentioned Turnbull, mentioned Rick Brown when he was covering Iowa. Halas. I mean, he'd always be careful who he picked out. Because he'd pick out somebody who he knew, and he knew who could take it, and who also knew what he was doing. I mean, because Hayden was a master psychologist in that respect.
So we have Hayden, and we also have Dan McCarney on the other side, who is I've had the pleasure to get to know him really well. So I don't have as many questions about it, but I can commentate that just this larger than life personality, and he hasn't slowed down a bit. Like it,
he's not. I talked to him.
He's just
a couple
crazy
weeks
as ever.
I know. I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and I just wanted to clarify if I had something right in the retirement column that I did right, and he told me, my gosh, yeah, he said I had a good memory. It was the day that his, how do we say this? Was he fired? I don't know what you want to call it.
Man,
they didn't.
I've contemplated. What
I know. How do you
was.
say that? With two games to go in the season, he knew he wasn't going to be coaching the next season.
They let him say he resigned.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
But he was pushed out.
When he resigned with two games left. Anyway, whatever it is.
What did you end up saying in the column? I forgot. How did you phrase that?
I think I ended up saying that he was forced out or something. I can't remember.
Pushed out is how I would say it, but like the dignity.
Yes, exactly. exactly. But anyway, so the night that happened, or the day that happened, I made names and I wrote my story. And then, and to Jamie Pollard's credit, this might be the toughest decision he ever had to make.
Mm.
I mean, I'm just guessing, and that's just me saying that. So that is 100% me just saying that.
But Pollard didn't have any legs in Ames. Nobody knew who he was.
Right.
It's not this guy that it is
right.
now.
And things weren't going well with Iowa State football. We could finish, every fan could finish Dan's sentences. You know, it just wasn't going great.
Attendance was not growing.
Exactly. But, and as it turned out, every win-win for everybody.
Yep.
But anyway, so after I got done writing my story and I wrote it in Ames, I'm walking out and I saw McCarty's light on in his office, because his office back then was in what was the Olson building? I don't know what that thing's called now.
Is it the Jacobson building?
The Jacobson building. Yeah, it was in the
building.
Jacobson building. Yeah. So I'm walking out and Max sees me and he says, "Come on down to my office." So I walked down to his office, just him and I, and he popped open a beer for me, and we had a beer and we just reminisced about stuff. And then his phone rings. And so I says, "Okay, I'll leave here and, you know, you can talk." And he said, "No, stay here." It was Urban Meyer. Dan didn't know Urban Meyer at that point in time. It was Urban Meyer saying,
it was in Florida.
Saying, "I'm sorry this happened to you, blah, blah, blah," you know. And then a year later, McCarney was working for Urban. I mean, so that was
one
cool.
national title.
Yeah, exactly. That's my Dan McCartney story. But yeah, that was cool.
Is there a guy or a gal maybe that you? The reason I asked this, I had this note jotted down. You and me were walking from the arena to our hotel in Kansas City one time, maybe 10 years ago, and we bumped into Todd Licklider. And Licklider comes up and gives you like the biggest hug. I'm like, I'm surprised you guys had that relationship based on that tenure. But he was a good guy, and you introduced me to him. I'm like, I had that guy wrong all the time. I'd never met him.
I remember that. I'll never. Yeah, we were walking back to the walking back to the Marriott from the arena, and at that point in time, Lick was I'm scouting for somebody. I think he might have been scouting for the Celtics.
Yeah, I don't know. He was a scout. You're right.
He was scouting for somebody. Yeah. Yeah. And I ran him off the street. That's the last person I would have ever expected to run into. Yeah. And it'd been a while too, since we'd seen each other. Yeah.
Is there a person who you've covered who you think maybe is misunderstood, who you would tell the fans, like, I get this with Chiswick a lot. People were like, I didn't have a great relationship with Chiswick, but Jamie Pollard swears he's like the nicest guy in the world. Like right. Like, I give Licklider as an example where these Iowa fans will be, "Oh, he's the worst coach ever." And maybe he was. That's not for debate, but he wasn't like a bad dude. Right?
Yeah. You're not trying to pull Steve Alford out of me, are you?
No.
Because that ain't happening.
No, I'm not trying to do that. I know enough there.
Yeah, exactly. Because I covered him too.
I'm just trying to get your perspective to humanize
I would have to say Chiswick, and I did not know him that well.
Okay.
I did not.
But people who did liked him.
Exactly.
His players liked him.
His players liked him, and he left good players at Iowa State during his, whatever it was, 2 years that he was there. What's the defensive back? Leonard Johnson,
Colecchio Simile.
Yeah. I think those guys.
Hayworth Hicks, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I would say him, and I never got to know him that well, but I would have liked to have.
I felt like Chiswick in my mind, and I don't have the longevity that you do there, but I started in like 03, 04. And in my mind, Iowa State had always at that point, looking back, I didn't realize it at the time. I felt it was very behind in the times as far as like what big time college athletics were. Everywhere from the way the fans acted to the way the facilities were to the way the coaches talked. Like Mac, scored him in the third quarter today.
Yeah.
After they lost by 40.
Yeah.
I thought Chiswick leaving the way he did, I'd be interested to ask Jamie this. It was very transactional, right? Like this guy comes in, he doesn't really do anything while he's there. He goes 5-19, and then he just bounces. Does the 2-minute meeting with his players.
Did he finally meet?
Maybe he didn't even meet with them. I don't know.
They backed up the U-Haul and boom, we're gone.
So
Here today,
I
gone
thought that was
tomorrow
like a
night.
really important part in Iowa State history, though, because it was like you have this athletic director at the time who is doing all these bold things. He's putting up bold billboards. He's, Pollard's talking unlike a human we've ever experienced.
Putting up a billboard in Iowa City.
Yeah, he's doing all this shit that and the Iowa State fans don't really know how to deal with it. Even to this day, it still boggles my mind. Like these people will complain about their tailgate spots when it's like, dude, you're in an arms race. You're trying to make money, whatever.
And now you've got to hire. Now you've got to make the most important hire to date.
Yeah. I thought that
coach.
Chiswick deal kind of pushed everybody's ass in a different direction at Iowa State.
But it pushed it in a positive direction.
It was a good thing
at Iowa State.
They could not be complacent
because they were polar opposites. You had Dan McCarney, who would be, if possible, and maybe he did even would tailgated after games. He's
eating dinner at frat houses on Thursday nights.
Yes, exactly. And then you've got Gene Chiswick, who I did never think wanted to be there, but like I said, maybe he was misunderstood. Maybe I would have liked to have gotten to know him better. And then you go from Chiswick to Rhodes, and right, yeah.
Yeah,
Rhodes.
This hometown boy,
hometown guy, and boom, first year got him to a bowl. I mean, played in bowl games, got Iowa State back to bowl games. It was a really transitional era for Iowa State athletics, for football specific, and Iowa State with Jimmy at the helm came out on top. I mean, because look what Rhodes got him back on.
Rhodes
got him back relevant.
The biggest thing he did is he sold tickets too.
And he sold tickets because he went back to being, he had some McCarney in him.
Yeah.
But that's Iowa boy. McCarney's an Iowan.
Mm-hmm.
Paul's an Iowan. He had Iowa in him, and that's us. And he knew exactly what the Iowa State fans wanted. He was one of them. I mean, he was one of us, because one of us Iowans.
So then,
as was Mac.
You have an era that I think is one of the most fascinating in the history of sports in our state. The Tom Davis to Steve Alford, that whole thing, there's so much packed into that.
Yeah.
Bowlesby's the guy, right?
Yes.
At that time. Okay. Bob Bowlesby, who goes on to become the commissioner of the Big 12 and has had a huge impact on like the future of college athletics.
Helped save the Big
12. And again, like I'm in an era of my life where Iowa basketball is the biggest sport because of Raycom.
Mm-hmm. God, and if remember Raycom, yeah.
The TV ratings, I want to get Larry Morgan on this. If you could help me line that up, I'd love to get him on and talk about those days, and maybe get Mac McCausland on here. Is Mac still around?
No.
Did he pass away?
Yes.
Man, I forgot about that. I forgot about. I had another one of those deals. Our old friend Scott Nolf. I didn't know that he had passed.
Oh, I didn't know that one either.
Yeah.
Former sports editor of the Ames Tribune.
In the Ames Tribune. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Well, maybe I could get Mac's son Kent to come.
Yeah.
I think he's still in
Kent's
Iowa.
Still in Iowa, in Waterloo.
Yeah. Well, I guess my greater point is Iowa basketball in the 90s was the biggest sport in the state because of Raycom, right? Like the TV ratings that thing would pull were insane.
It was big. I wasn't paying attention to TV ratings back then, but I agree with you.
Doctorman did a walkthrough on that like 5 years ago.
Doctorman's good. Scott's good at that stuff. Yes.
It is incredible the TV ratings that thing would pull.
Yeah.
And Tom Davis was like all of our uncle. He was like a grandpa.
Right.
He just this soft. I don't know if you would call him that, but like he
was.
I agree. Never raised his voice. And then you go to the Alford thing. Like what do you remember from those days that you could shed some insight on?
The transition from Tom Davis, who was in a situation, to the best of my knowledge. Now I had a little bit of Tom. I had Tom's last few years. Rick Brown had
which they were good.
Yeah, they
weren't
good.
Bad.
Yes, exactly. But the what'd you say? What'd you call it with Mac? Fan interest wasn't enthusiasm wasn't quite there. And Bowlesby knew there had to be a change. Now,
Didn't
and
they go to the
Steve
Sweet
Alford at
16
that
his
time.
last year?
Yeah. Yes.
And then he was,
Yeah.
which
exactly.
is, think about that now.
They beat Kansas. I think that last year they won at Kansas. They played it.
Settles was on that team.
Oh, with that, Settles and McCausland both were.
Yep.
Yes. Settles and I talked about that a few times during the 15 games he'd do at Iowa State basketball.
Settles is the best.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
He might be my favorite athlete in our state's history.
Well, I think he's a pretty good TV commentator
He's
too.
phenomenal.
But
just phenomenal.
But so the transition from Tom Davis to Alford was even more opposite than McCarney and Chiswick. I mean, that was it all? Was it, who was it? It was, who now I'm all screwed up. Who followed Tom?
It was
Alford or Lick?
Alford did. And then it went to Licklider.
Yeah. Okay.
Because Licklider had those like Gatons and those types of guys that they had some decent pieces, but they could never put it together.
The Alford thing was, well, he was the hot assistant out there, the Bobby Knight guy.
Did it not feel like that was Iowa's McCarney to Chiswick deal though? Because like Iowa basketball was always fun. It was cute. We know we're going to get to a certain point.
But you knew what you were going to get. Yes.
So now we're going to go all in.
And
we're going to get the hot name.
I know it.
And then it just blows up in spectacular fashion.
It 100% it did. I guess I can say this. I thought Steve Alford was acted at times very entitled.
Yeah.
I said at times.
John Miller has told me stories when he was running Hawkeye Nation of like just pure intimidation tactics.
He tried.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. There were times when after games, I remember a game at Purdue where, and that's all well and good. It's all well and good. But Steve blamed players for losing that game. When's the last time you've heard a coach blame players for losing a game other than, I don't know, Saban sometimes, or used to at least.
Well, you can't do that now though. Transfer.
No, you can't. Yeah, exactly. Oh God,
they're getting the hell out of here,
dude. There's a summer long podcast there with the
What'd you say about me, Coach? I'm out.
See you, bye. I'm
the
done.
hell out of here.
I'm done. Yeah, I'm like, good Lord. Yeah. Oh my God. And that's another thing. There was no transfer portal back then, and there was no opting out of bowl games back then.
The bowl game was a huge deal.
I love what Carpinelli is.
He's all over
what
it.
He brought up. I love it. I mean, I know him a little bit, but I love what he brought up, and I 100% agree with him. If anybody, and Bloom, we're off.
It's
really.
all right.
And Bloom would know this better than anybody.
I told you we're going to have to do more than one of these.
And Bloom would know this.
We're already in an hour.
Bloom would know this better than anybody, but anybody that's got some kind of NIL thing, I would hope that this contract is for throughout the length of the season and postseason. I mean, because and I'm not just, it happens everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
What was the most recent one? Florida State?
Do you remember?
Yeah. And that's just ridiculous. And those kids are still getting paid their NIL money.
I remember sitting, I don't remember the year. I remember sitting specifically because it was such shocking news to me. I was sitting at Westtown Pub in Ames. My in-laws live right across the street from there, and I was having a beer. And I remember looking at my phone, and I was so shocked that this Michigan player, like a defensive back, had opted out to play of a New Year's Six game. Wasn't even a playoff.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I think I'm good. I'm not going to play in the Orange Bowl or whatever it was this year. I'm like, oh my God. How could this even be real? Why would you want to play in the Orange Bowl?
Some agent got in his ear and said, you've got a shot to
and now
make a
look,
lot of money.
We got guys. When's the first guy that's like, I mean, probably already seen it and I just can't remember it, but like, oh, I play for Ohio State and I've got this ankle injury and I could probably get back, but we've already lost 2 games and we're not going to be playoff eligible. So I'm just going to sit out the rest of the season.
I'm sure we've seen it.
Yeah, probably seen it already.
We haven't seen it at Iowa State. I can't.
These people in power, greed ruins everything, right?
Like, without question.
That you're going to alienate your fan base at some point. Like these they've got to watch it.
And there's so much money involved in everything right now.
Carpinelli's all over it, and he's right. Like
100%.
I'll say this: we will not at Cyclone Fanatic put as much firepower, and we put in less now that we used to. I will not cover bowl games the same way going forward unless things change.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like that deal in Memphis, like the access is terrible. We can't go to practice now.
Yeah.
The half the team's not going to play, because the transfer portal, and that's the fault of nobody at Iowa State. I'm not blaming them or the Liberty Bowl or anything, but it used to be we would need to be there for a week. I mean, you would go 10 days before sometimes, right?
Yeah, the columnists at the Register would historically be there when the team landed, and that's when we would be there. I mean, like the most recent years, it was Chad and I. Chad would be on the ground wherever Iowa was playing, on the ground and waiting for the team at the hotel. I would be on the ground and waiting for Iowa State at the team hotel. And we're the only ones there. And Kirk Ferentz or Campbell, they see we're us the only one there. They're sure as hell not going to walk away from us. They're going to have to talk to us, which they did.
Yeah, those guys are fine. I mean, the situation in general.
But but when's the last time we went to practice at a bowl?
When's the last time there's been news?
That's true too.
Right? Like,
I mean, we knew TJ Tampa was not going to play before the bowl game.
Yeah.
We essentially knew that, for example. I guess in that respect, the Mike Rose in whatever
that surprised me.
Whatever that was.
That was a surprise on game day.
Camping World. At the Camping World, where was it? That was in Orlando.
That was in Orlando, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of got inkling to that 24 hours before, maybe, because he had been hurt. But that was maybe news coming out of that. But other than that, we other than the steady stream of daily updates of just feature stuff, but there's no news. But now you can't even do a daily feature stuff because we don't have access to practice anymore. Now at Iowa State, I think we had access every day of something.
We had access, but we couldn't
go to practice, and which we like to see practice. I mean, we like to get an inkling, a feel of what's going on.
They just completely shut it down. Last time Iowa State was there, I remember going to both schools practice. Like,
oh yeah, exactly.
Doing that, and like this year was none of that. Like,
did we even go to an Iowa State practice this last football season? I mean, we usually went to the one the first practice of the fall. I don't think we did that.
Well, they've done the deal in the spring where they'll go to like Ames High School.
They did that.
We can see those.
They did that.
But
in the fall, world. We used to be able to go to the very first practice.
Well, back to my point on Carpinelli, like he's fighting the good fight here. People will make fun of him because he's the bull guy and bulls don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
But he's trying to protect like a whole entity, and these schools and these players, and like, again, it's so hard because how do you force them? There's no collective bargaining. There's nobody representing these players. But like, I'll just say this from like a business standpoint for us, we will not be sending more than one person to a bowl game unless this whole thing changes.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't see the point anymore. It is like truly a glorified exhibition game.
Without question. Yes. That I agree. When it's the New York Six, the New Year's Six and below, below the New Year.
Let me ask you this. Six. Let's say Iowa State this year was in this total hypothetical. And put Cooper DeGene with Iowa too, so we don't get accused of being biased or any madness. Let's say either one of those teams are in the Fiesta Bowl this year, like Iowa State was in 2020. And that was this great moment for the Campbell regime. They get over the hump. Iowa State wins its biggest bowl game ever. Big deal. If Iowa or Iowa State was in that situation this year, would TJ Tampa have played in that game?
Absolutely.
Or you think he would have?
I do.
Okay.
If it was a New Year's Six game,
I would have gone the other way.
See, I think he would have played.
Interesting.
I do, and that's just me. I've not asked him that. I've not asked his father that.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is not like singling out TJ Tampa, more just like that caliber of a player. Would they
players
play
in general?
Yes. And I was going to say Cooper DeGene for Iowa because he had been coming off the injury, right?
Yeah.
Like, would those players play in that game now?
Yes.
I would vote.
I would say
they wouldn't, but
okay.
Obviously, it's going to depend on the guy, right?
The play,
like Purdy decided to play in that Campy won a bowl when he really didn't need to, right? Like,
Right.
he's a guy that would.
Yeah.
But I think more players would vote no.
I maybe. I hope not.
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I just don't think
But
but that's where
I don't know. I would say, in my mind, the cutoff would be the New Year's 6 games.
But I wonder, though, Randy, with the playoff being expanded the way it is, it's like, well, those get watered down now. Like,
sure, but you still got that. Sure, but you absolutely still have that chance if you're that one. If you've got that one inkling of a chance to still get to the college football championship game, there's 12 chances for that now, or however, whatever it is, to do that now. I think if you make the college football playoffs, I think that's enough juice.
the playoffs will.
Okay.
I'm
talking about the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, so I'm saying like the bowl games that are outside of that now.
Oh,
that used to be the prestigious ones that weren't in the playoff.
I agree. Yes,
So
I think there'll be some thought given to that. Yes.
Let's say like the Capital One Bowl is a good example. Iowa goes to it all the time. Like, and that's
Yes.
that's thought of as one of the better bowls that's
Right.
not in the playoff. I just wonder now, will those bowls become what,
Right. And now
the
you're
Belk Bowl or whatever.
but now you're putting that part of that decision making is being put back on. In my mind, if you do the NIL right, and that word is mine, in my mind, you're having these kids sign contracts.
Yeah.
And you're signing contracts for a season, including postseason.
Yep.
You're
playing in the damn bowl game. It's part of your contract.
And Lord knows that if players become employees of universities, we'll see that's the ending. There'll be no opting out there.
No, and they should. And this is what I always go back to.
Because they're breaking their
all this greed. You better not piss off the fans.
Without question. Yes.
Without them, you're none of this match.
Yeah.
You don't have a scholarship. You're not making, $1 million to be a linebackers coach anymore.
Right.
Like none of that happens if it's not for the fans.
And the fans, I don't know what the attendance was last year for Iowa State at the Liberty Bowl, but
considerably down.
Yeah, it was, and I don't know whether that had anything to do with the player, the players potentially opting out. I don't think so.
I doubt it.
Maybe, and you and I are going to differ on this one. Maybe have something to do with the site because Iowa State was just there 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
That's
and
fair.
The weather was crappy then, and it was crappy this time, and we knew the weather was going to be crappy this time.
I love Memphis, that, but like
I do.
Not everybody does. Like
Right.
my mom and dad went to that first one, and they're like, "We'll never go back to that place."
Yeah.
But I even think like if they would have gone to Orlando, that would have been a tough sell.
It depends. Orlando's a tough sell for fans unless the fans. I think the Iowa State fans had a good time in Orlando the last time they were there, and that's because the media hotel was out on International Drive.
Yeah,
and we were right there in the middle of it, and that was a great experience. But Orlando can be a bad experience too. I mean, I've stayed downtown before, in Orlando, and that's not good.
I just wonder too, like if with the Iowa State thing, they've been to so many more bowl games. It used to be a deal. Remember when Rhodes got them to that bowl game out in
Phoenix?
Yeah.
They beat Minnesota.
Yeah, and that. God, there were like 30,000 people.
It was
at that
awesome.
Bad bowl game.
Yeah.
It's like one of the least.
But nonetheless, it was still a bowl game that run by the Fiesta Bowl committee. It still had prestige to
and
it.
Iowa State fans were hungry.
It was, and they had a huge celebration in downtown Tempe on New Year's Eve. Was it New Year's? The game was on New Year's Eve.
We went out to that ghost town.
Well, that's dude, and that's as fun a I covered a lot of Iowa bowls, and it's just different philosophies. Iowa would have a big Hawkeye huddle, they call them, in a building after before games or before the bowl game, couple days before the bowl game, a big celebration, and the band would be there and everything, and that was cool. That's what the Iowa fans liked. Iowa State fans got a little more Shenandoah in him. and that ranch thing in Phoenix.
They drank it dry.
It was
They did.
It was spectacular.
Drank it dry.
I love that. And yeah, because the weather was great too. It was great that night. I'll never forget it. I mean, it was spectacular. It was just what the Iowa State fans wanted before that game.
We're past the point where I can say this now. I was with Ken Miller and Whipper at that, and
now you've just made Whipper's day.
We had, I don't even want to count how many beers went down that night, and Kenny put it on Joel McRae for us.
What?
He put it on Clear Channel at the time.
Oh, I see what
Clear
you're saying.
Channel paid for all of our our night. I think I can say it now because Joel's not there anymore, and
Joel's no longer there.
Ken's an independent contractor. That's the memory I have.
Joel's no
from
longer
that
there. Yeah. What's Joel doing now?
Counting
his money?
I know, but I'll tell you off the air. I don't know if I can.
Don't worry about it.
He's in like PR now.
Okay.
That type of a world. Well, I want to do this again. We're at hour 10. We could probably go another 3 hours. This could be like one of those Rogan things, Aiden. But you're going to be around, right? Like, so we'll tell everybody
I'll
you're
be
moving.
here at Okoboji.
You're here at Okoboji. So if I want to get you back down in studio, you come back down at some point. So are you moving there just so people want to know what you're up to?
No, I am. And I've had
basically lived there anyway.
Exactly. I've lived 2 places. No, you're right. There's furniture up there. My daughters each have a room up there in the condo, and I mean, it's been fully functional for whatever since my wife died 7 years ago, 8 years ago. So, so now gradually, I just over the last couple of years, I've kind of known what was going on in the background over the last couple of years, what I was planning, at least in my head. I've been taking stuff up as far as the clothes are concerned. So I just have very minimal clothes anymore left in my apartment in Altoona. So, I mean, it's just very minimal. The only thing I've left in Altoona is a couch, a chair, a bed, and a very small table with my laptop on it. And the clothes that I still haven't taken up.
Thinking about getting another cat, anything like that?
Never. Next question. Never.
Man. So it was your wife's cat.
I inherited the cat. But I inherited an old cat.
It's been like a countdown for 5 years.
I inherited an old cat.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll tell that story again some other time. Well, I don't think this will be the end of seeing you here. We love you.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you. I was kind of hoping you wouldn't work until you were like 95. I kind of thought for a while you were going to be Sid Hartman.
Sid Hartman. No,
you got way too much fun life to live.
Not happening. No, yeah, exactly. And it's just that I like Okoboji. People say, where do you go during the winter? Okoboji, same place I'm going during the summer, and yeah, the weather gets crappy up there during the winter, but starting about now, I mean, the docks have been in, good Lord, up there for 2 months, month and a half.
We're going to get done with this. We're going to go have some lunch, and we're going to get a date to do another one of these.
Okay.
And we'll dig deep because I have so many questions. Like I could do this for hours. Like this is just.
Well, we just fly it off and get off topic. So.
Well, I think that's probably a good thing. That means there's
we can do
a lot
this
to talk about
more often during the season too.
I think we could. I think there's something to it. Aiden, thank you for producing as always. He is Randy Peterson. Go and read his retirement column if you haven't. We will tweet it out from the Iowa Everywhere stuff with this so you guys can see that. And we appreciate our sponsor, Steeple Ridge Bourbon, over there in Erling, Iowa. You can stop by there on your way up to Okoboji.
I've taken every back road on the planet up there. So
there you go. He's Randy Peterson. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching here on Iowa Everywhere.